I'm looking here on page 6, and where it says the weapons with which the bourgeoisie felled feudalism to the ground are now turned against the bourgeoisie itself. Um, Feudalism is thought of as that form of medieval European society that was basically a landed agricultural society with an aristocracy whose power was in the land, and it was a kind of society, and the bourgeois destroyed that society. I mean, in effect, had to destroy it in order to build modern free market capitalist societies. Um, the idea being that the old society had its ways, its political, social, cultural, economic relations, and the new forces of modern science embodied in the technology of new ways of making things, of the division of labor, as Smith was talking about, new markets, that the old society could no longer handle the dynamic forces of these things. It had to be destroyed. It was inevitable. And the emergence of the bourgeoisie as the victorious dominant class was really the victory of the new forces of production and exchange. The old world, it wasn't set up for that. It had to go away. Well, what Marx and Engels are saying here is that uh, the same thing that happened to the feudal society is now happening to bourgeois society. The new forces that have been created are bursting the bounds of the traditional property relations, social relations of the society. Um, that the weapons with which the bourgeoisie felled feudalism to the ground are now turned against the bourgeoisie itself. A new society has to be set up. I mean, and really, the basis of it is production. We're too good at making things now. We're the wealth we can produce by our labor is being held back by the bourgeoisie because they want to own everything. Right? But this can no longer be tolerated. They continue, but not only has the bourgeoisie forged the weapons that bring death to itself, it has also called into existence the men who are to wield those weapons, the modern working class, the proletariat. And so the most important thing about their age, and again, writing in the mid 19th century, 1948, from Marx and Engels, is the emergence of the industrial proletariat. That basically means factory workers in cities. You have to imagine that, especially in England, you have cities that are used to be villages or little towns 50 years ago and now have like a million people in them. The great industrial cities of, say, the north of England, like Manchester being the most, I guess, important one, but other cities too. I mean, Birmingham, Liverpool, people are streaming into the cities to be factory workers. People who used to be small artisans in little villages are more likely agricultural workers. They're now moving into the cities and working in factories and having jobs like that. And they form a new class, the new class of workers that are needed by the bourgeoisie to work in their factories. And Marx and Engels believe that this new class, the industrial worker, the modern proletariat, will be the revolutionary class. Um, in proportion as the bourgeoisie, that is, capital, is developed, in the same proportion is the proletariat, the modern working class, developed. It's inevitable. I mean, if capital is going to develop, if wealth, industrial wealth is going to develop, it needs workers. It needs workers to exploit. So it's going to create a class of workers, a class of laborers who live only so long as they find work, and who find work only so long as their labor increases capital. These laborers who must sell themselves piecemeal. That's what selling, being a wage earner does mean selling your labor, your time, your activity to others, and that's how you live, is by selling your labor. You have nothing else to sell. Like every article, they are a commodity. These laborers who must sell themselves piecemeal are a commodity, like every other article of commerce, and are constantly exposed to all the vicissitudes of competition, to all the fluctuations of the market. You are basically your labor. You're selling yourself as a commodity, and like every other commodity, the price of it goes up and down depending upon conditions. And the problem is that when the price goes down, you starve, right? So I think you can see what they're thinking, right? What they're thinking, Marx and Engels, is that revolution is inevitable because they out of pure self-preservation, this class of workers, proletariat, will have to take over. And what that means is they will control the factories. They will control the means of production. They will control the source of wealth as a class. And that, again, this is inevitable just out of pure self-preservation, because if they don't, you know, they starve. I'm not saying that they were correct, Marx and Engels, but they certainly had an argument. Whether it turned out to be right or not, obviously, a complicated story.